Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori and this is Africa 54. First tonight, increasing violence in the Central African Republic. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations is warning that the country is spiraling into complete chaos. The French have responded with an offer of 1,000 troops. Now, Jean Eliasson has endorsed a plan to transform an African force on the ground in the CAR into a UN peacekeeping force.
Is becoming a breeding ground for extremists and armed groups in a region that is already suffering from conflict and instability. If this situation is left to fester, it may develop into a religious and ethnic conflict with long-standing consequences, even a civil war that could spread into neighboring countries.
Well, the situation in the Central African Republic has been chaotic since March when rebels overthrew the president of the country, Francois Bozizé. Joining us for more perspective is VOA's UN correspondent, Margaret Besheer, who is in New York. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Vincent.
Yes, now first, let's talk about the proposal to transform the African force on the ground into a UN peacekeeping force. What does this achieve if this happens?
Right. Well, let's just remember that it is just that, a proposal, and it's one of 5 proposals on the table right now. The Secretary General presented a report last week to the Security Council about the Central African Republic, where he did express his concerns about how the country is descending into chaos, and he put out some proposals of what to do to restore law and order. Among them was this idea of transforming this African mission on the ground into a proper UN peacekeeping mission, which would give it better equipment, it would give it steady funding, it has certain benefits if it becomes part of the UN.
Yes.
But that's something we're not looking at happening immediately. The French ambassador spoke last night after the Security Council meeting, and he said that they're going to ask the Secretary General to write a report detailing, what a peacekeeping mission would do, what its mandate would be, all that sort of information that's very important. And he'll have 3 months to do that. So we're not looking at the idea of peacekeepers until March.
Now,
so it's a time off.
Yes. What are the other suggestions then that could lead to at least stemming the situation in the Central African Republic in the coming few months?
Well, there's talk about a trust fund where the UN would help support the African troops. There's talk about multilateral and bilateral assistance. So I think we're going to see some of those measures in the short term. Also, I think there's a desire by the Africans to try and take care of this situation on their own, to do it themselves. So the regional groups are willing to become involved with the UN, but the transitional authorities in Central African Republic seem to want to just let the Africans do it first, and then we'll see what happens. But the UN sent out an assessment mission recently, and they came back saying that the majority of the actors they spoke to in Central African Republic would like to see it become a UN peacekeeping mission. And I think probably we will see that happen down the road. But don't forget, the situation on the ground has to be right for it. They're not going to send their peacekeepers into chaos.
Now, Margaret, we know that the French are sending troops there, but countries like the US, of course, have cut off links with the government in Bangui. How is the situation? I mean, we remember Mali, but this is not Mali.
Right, exactly. This is not Mali. This was a coup. The government was overthrown. Now there's this transitional government. We have all these problems with ex-Seleka, with groups that are opposing Seleka as well. Then we have the intercommunal violence now that is increasing, taking place. The Deputy Secretary General yesterday in his briefing to the Security Council highlighted human rights abuses. He said there's widespread looting, arbitrary arrests. I mean, there's all sorts of problems. So things need to really kind of come under control. So we'll see what happens now. The Africans are on the ground. There's about 3,000 of them. I think next month that number will go up slightly to about 3,600. And we'll have the reinforcement of the French troops. So perhaps that will start to change things on the ground the way it did in Mali. But again, this isn't Mali.
It's a different situation. Thanks a lot, Margaret, for your reporting there.
Thank you, Vincent.
That's Margaret Besheer, Voice of America correspondent at the UN in New York.